Professor Kondo will be speaking to us about Mott states and high TC cuprates with the disorder removed.
Okay, thank you for introduction. My name is Takeshi Kondo from ISP, the University of Tokyo. First of all, let me thank the organizer for giving me this great opportunity. I'm very pleased to present my recent works. And before forgetting, let me introduce my collaborators. I'm talking about the result of multi-layer cuprate. The nice single crystal provided Professor Tokiwa's group, and we are using laser-based APEs constructed in our laboratories, and also time to time we also use synchrotron radiation APE system in diamond light source, and we are discussing a lot with Professor Toyama and Dr. Sakai, and my students are main players of this result. So, as you know, this is a phase diagram of cuprate, and superconductivity occurs between half-filled Mott insulator and simple metal, and still there are a lot of debate what is the intrinsic bond structure between these two states. And from the beginning of this cuprate research, a lot of people are expecting the formation of a small hole pocket, but so far there was no clear observation of this kind of small pocket. And in reality, you only observe between this arc pocket and the large film surface, and which is film arc. And recently, we observed this small pocket by studying multi-layered cuprate. And this pocket was found appears in the protected inner layer of a multi-layer system. So what is multi-layered cuprate? So as you know, in cuprate, you can increase the number of cuprate layers from 1 to 3, even more. And you can we can clearly separate two systems. One is single and double layer, because even in double layer system, these two coupled layers can be equivalent. Both are doped from the adjacent dopant block. But in the multi-layer system, is 3 or more layers per unit cell. You can distinguish different coupled layers. One is just adjacent to block layer, so carrier is more doped. And another one is protected or far from this dopant layer, so carrier doping level is less than this outer layer. And protected means there is no disorder, so you can expect very clean. So in the case of double layer, couples double layer are strongly hybridized, so you can observe two bond dispersion corresponding to antibonding and bonding. But in the case of multi-layer system, the potential of this coupled layer become different. So finally, you can expect these two layers are totally separate. And in APES, you can observe this kind of two dispersions looks like similar to this double layer case. But superconducting gap size so different due to the different carrier doping level between outer and inner layer. And we observed this bismuth 223 and found that hybridization occurs only below TC, only when this outer and inner dispersion meet each other. This never happens in the case of double layer because hybridization already occurred above TC. So, as I said, other property of a multi-layer system is inner layer is very clean because far from dopant layer. And famous structure of cuprate is in homogeneity gap state in the real space. And it's mostly partly coming from the disorders induced from the adjacent dopant layer. So it is kind of challenging to observe intrinsic electronic state without random distribution of dopant atoms. And you cannot forget that available high TC is achieved in the triple layer, where the, which has the inner layer, which is very clean. So it is very important to study the electronic structure, electronic property of this clean inner layer. Especially lightly doped state is very sensitive to disorder because of weak screening effect. And this phase diagram mostly constructed based on the study of single and double layer cuprate, which has a disorder. And lightly doped cuprate has been studied a lot, for example, in the oxychloride system. And if you dope to this half-filled Mott state, film level started to jump to cross film level start to cross the lower Hubbard band. Then, even though you expect the formation of a small film pocket, actually only part of film arc is observed by APES. And it also found that to generate the well-defined quasi-particle, you need a doping level like more than 10%. And in the less doped level, huge incoherent part is appeared. So you can say it's a polaron-like state in this lightly doped region. And this lightly doped state also studied in the single layer cuprate, for example, bismuth 201 and LSCO. And in the bismuth 201, again, quasi-particle peak appears only when you doped more than 10%. And if you around the edge of TC dome, you can observe only a single point with a quasi-particle peak. And in LSCO, the carrier doping level, where the quasi-particle peak is observed, it can be much less, around 3%. But again, this peak appears only diagonal cut or single point. And if you go slightly off this point, immediately spectral peak disappear and dumped Sud gap state appear. So properties of lightly doped state of disordered single and double layer is polaronic state and nodal liquid states. So what is the property of this clean protect inner layer? So of course, if you increase the layer, number of the layer, you can expect cleaner carpet layer. So we focus this optical fluorine multi-layered cuprates. In this system, you can increase the number of carpet layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6. And you can again separate two systems, multi-layer and single and double layer, with clean carpet plane and disordered carpet layer. And the phase diagram of these two regions also different. In the multi-layer system, antiferro state and superconducting dome are extended to wider doping region. Then there is an overlapped state, which is very different. Is different from the very famous phase diagram of cuprate, constructed from the single and double layered cuprate. So I'm keeping saying inner layer is very clean, actually, which is more clearly described by the result of NMR. This is the spectrum of NMR, which is very sensitive to the roughness of a coupled layer and inhomogeneity of carriers. As you see, LSU has a very broad peak due to the buckling of coupled layer, and bismuth 2212 also very broad, which is consistent with the STM result showing inhomogeneous state. YBCO and mercury cuprate show this very sharp, which can be expected from the observation of quantum oscillation, but multi-layer system shows much sharper spectra of NMR, especially this peak becomes sharpest in the inner layer of a multi-layer system. So we can get very rare case, which is clean plus heavily underdoped state in the inner layer of a multi-layer system. So this is a sample we studied. The TC value is around 65 Kelvin, and the picture shows there is no back modulation, which is famous, for example, in bismuth visco. And this is a most important result. We found that two small pockets rather than the famous Fermi arc. And this is a dispersion along the cut 1, 2, 3. And you can clearly see the dispersion in the backside of Brilliant zone about this antiferro zone boundary. And for the Fermi arc, there is no counterpart. And we also here show the dispersion along antiferro zone boundary and clearly show very sharp boundary dispersion, which cannot expected in the case of a Fermi arc. So this is really the part of a Fermi pocket, not the Fermi arc. And you can expect from the carrier distribution, the Fermi arc is for the outer layer and two pockets for the inner layer, and the smallest one coming from the most inner layers. And you can also draw the dispersion like this, and this state is the slightly doped lower Howard band. Of course, ARPIS is very sensitive to surface state, so we confirmed this pocket is really coming from the bulk state. So we studied quantum oscillation as plotted here, and Fermi transport peak are consistent from the double coupled double small Fermi pocket. And the size of each pocket are listed in this table, and the value percentage of Brilliant zone is much well between this quantum oscillation and ARPIS result. And I show here the quality of a spectral peak, which is very sensitive to the disorder or scattering rate. And we found that the spectral peak becomes sharper and sharper from the Fermi arc to the smallest Fermi pocket, which is very unexpected because, for example, in the study of 2212, people found that spectral peak become broader and broader towards underdoping, and people say this broadening or larger scattering rate is related to the strong correlation, but our result is kind of opposite. For the smaller pocket with less carriers, the spectral quality, spectral peak becomes sharper and sharper. That means lifetime of a quasi particle is getting longer. So really, our pocket coming from the inner protected layer. And this this trend is also confirmed by the quantum oscillation, which can also get the scattering rate. We found that scattering rate is much less for the smaller pocket. So our pocket is really clean. And I here show the band dispersion along the antiferro zone boundary, and we observe the periodic band dispersion due to this pocket. And the dispersion energy is around 1.5, which is quite large. But this energy scale is comparable to the previous result, half-filled state of oxychloride cuprate. And interestingly, this width is also consistent with the bond structure of heavily overdosed state. So maybe people wonder what happened at a high temperature above the nail temperature, which was estimated around 135 Kelvin from NMR. And the quality of dispersion are very sensitive to the different brilliant zone due to Abbe's matrix element. For the first zone, you can clearly see the holding back of band dispersion. But in the second zone, this signature is less, but still clearly observed. So here I plot the dispersion above Tn for 200 and 2050 Kelvin. In the both temperatures, we kept observing this band holding or filling pocket. And this is also consistent with the result of mercury oxychloride cuprate, where you keep observing this holding back even around 300 Kelvin above Tn. So our result of multi-layer system is Mott state, not the Slater case. In the Slater state, this pocket should disappear above Tn. So our pocket really due to the Mott state. And also, you would be interested in the superconducting gap, which I show here. I plot here the original curve and the symmetrical curve to show the gap opening around this filling pocket. And we clearly see the gap opening if you go from the nodal direction to the edge of this pocket. And I plot here the size in the polar coordinates. So this gap opening in the pocket means superconducting pairing and antiferro order coexist with each other. Before, there was an argument which phase is correct between this clear separation, antiferro and superconductivity, and or uniform mixture between these states. And some people think that in homogeneous state observed by STM may be due to this separation and slight Kerr difference for each domain on the real space. But our result means pairing can really uniformly coexist with this antiferro order.
So we're at the 10-minute, we're technically into the beginning questions.
Okay. So the next question: what happens if your carriers are more reduced? Actually, it's hard to make a single crystal with various carrier concentration. So we use two methods. One is increase the number of the layers to make the less doping, and another is potassium deposition, input the electron or reduce hole. So here I show the quality of crystal. The TC is almost the same. That means carrier concentration almost the same between the 5-layer and the 6-layer. And the resistivity shows T square consistent with the other underdoped cuprate. So our sample is located in the very heavily underdoped region. And here compare the pocket. This is the result I already shown, and this is a new result from the 6-layer. Looks similar filling arc and double pocket, but if you compare clearly in detail, you can see difference, but only in the smaller pocket. Looks much smaller in the 6-layer. This result was also confirmed by quantum oscillation. Actually, this can be easily understood because in the 6-layer, innermost layer become doubled, so carrier concentration can be also become half. This is also important because this clear division of carriers means one correspondence between real space and momentum space is very good. That means this pocket coming from this layer and this arc coming this layer, this kind of one-to-one corresponding really works. And we also confirmed by model calculation that if you increase a little bit of hopping, immediately in a layer shows a splitting, barrier splitting. But our data doesn't show such splitting from the RPS and quantum oscillation. That means each layer very separated, almost 100%. And you might wonder, really, each layer can be so separated because Bismuth-212 show clearly barrier splitting. But this author found that this splitting becomes less and less toward underdoping, and even 10% splitting becomes so small. But our case is much less doping, like 1 or 4%. So this barrier coupling can be much less. So each layer can be almost isolated. So now I can say this pocket, 1% doping coming from these inner layers. And surprisingly, we found even this only 1% doped Mott state. So we can see clear, well-defined quartz particle, which is much sharper than result of well-studied Bismuth-212. And we didn't observe the incoherent part, which called polaron-like state. So inner protect quartz layer is much have a very different electric state. Sorry, one more minute. So what happened if you potassium doped? This is the result without potassium deposition and after potassium deposition, and the pocket size becomes smaller and smaller, and even we could reduce down to 0.7%. Still, the quartz particle survive. That means a tiny amount of carriers are enough to generate well-defined quartz particle in the clean system of quartz layer. And I can draw a new phase diagram of this clean inner plane. Mott state maybe occurs only just at half field. And if you dope carriers, immediately become metallic. So what is the edge of this dome? So this is the result. We found that superconducting gap clearly observed before potassium deposition crossed by 1 minute potassium deposition, and this doping level is around 4%. So I can also draw the edge of this dome. This dome ends around 4%, which is kind of surprising because some calculations suggest only tiny carrier can create the pair formation, but 4% is some kind of magic number. So this is consistent with that of a very dirty case of LCO. Okay, so maybe this 4% is anyway important, even clean system in cuprate. So this is a conclusion. I draw here the different phase diagram, and in my talk I introduced a new phase diagram for the clean inner layer of multi-layer system. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, we have a few minutes for questions.
So can you extract the line width versus energy or EDC?
Line width of EDC, for example, this is a 7 electron volt, and sharper than, for example, the spectra of optimally doped 212.
Is it possible to make a statement when it's omega square or?
You mean as a function of energy?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have not extracted. Yeah, sorry, I have not done.
Okay. Thank you.
Very nice. I was curious, can you elaborate on the evidence for the anti-ferromagnetic order?
Yeah, I mean, at least animal studies, our collaborators observed this antiferro from the same system, same 5-layer material.
Do you see it in susceptibility? Like, what other quantities do you also see the program?
Yeah, the problem is the sample is tiny, so from the single crystal it was not possible, but from the polycrystal, animal people observed, and maybe susceptibility also can be observed. Mm.
Can I ask, so the part where you exclusive pockets above T and you said this is not due to antiferromagnetic order, but due to Mott staying state. Could you explain a bit why you would get a pocket to do that?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So the part where you observe the pockets still surviving above Tn,
Mm-hmm.
and then you conclude that that must be due to Mott staying.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Okay. This guy. So my point is the Tn is around 135 Kelvin from NMR, and we raise the temperature above Tn, like 200 to 250 Kelvin, but still you can see clearly this holding back due to the antiferro zone boundary. So some people argues sometimes this band holding coming from due to the strata insulator, that means this pocket disappears above Tn. But in our case, this pocket survive even above Tn, so our state is due to Mott state, not the strata case.
So I realize that different layers are different, but still, is it possible to see whether the whole number is giving carriers that's roughly compatible with the outputs measured that we synthesize?
Yeah, at least from the office, the area is 1 or 2%, and control oscillation also agree with this number. But for me, real carrier concentration is different from the Fermi surface area.
Just trying to see whether the whole coefficient also gives roughly the same.
For the coefficient, the problem is, in any transport, accumulate all the results from the other areas, so kind of cannot separate.
Thank you.
So, the last question.
And a very simple question, what's the resistivity like?
Resistivity, like?
Did you show it?
Yes, at least, yeah, for the 6-layer, must be similar to 5-layer case. And it's kind of t-square. This is the raw data, and I here plot the function of t-square, and you can fit linear up to 240 Kelvin, which kind of comparable to really heavily underdoped case for many other cuprates.
Okay, thanks.
All right, TC, really the last question.
So nice talk. So it looks like you have some doping dependence of the ENT resistivity slope, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what's the dependence? It's on the top right panel.
You mean this guy?
No, the previous one.
Huh?
The resistivity plot.
Go back one second.
From this guy.
One you just had.
Yeah.
What this happen?
The one that you showed,
The resistivity versus
the
temperature.
temperature, right?
The resistivity versus temperature. Okay. So you're talking about the resistivity.
Not this one, the one that you have the resistivity versus temperature plot on the
Yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Ah,
So it looks like this slope is not a constant, right? It has some doping dependence, am I correct?
doping dependence for the,
In the upper right, that's LSCO.
This is from the reference. It's not our result. And I just want to compare the behavior from the other cuprate. And yeah, of course, this transport coming from the all layers combination. But just I want to say here, the overall character constellation of this material is heavily underdoped.
But the question is, do you have the other curves for the other dopings?
Other doping for this crystal, I mean, I don't have a crystal with different doping level. Only I measured for this TC.
All right, let's thank the speaker again.
Thank you.